Hi, I'm Patrick Reagan. Welcome to the Network Security, Part 2, Risks, Vulnerabilities, and Threats. During this video, we'll discuss risks in network security as it relates to threats and vulnerabilities and how you should manage risk. As always, stick around for the practice question at the end to test your knowledge and help you prepare for the Network Plus exam. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to click the like button. And if you have not already, subscribe to the Pat Has Your Back channel for more tech training content and technical know-how. Risk is the potential for loss, damage, or disruption of an organization's digital assets, systems, or operations resulting from a cyber threat exploiting a vulnerability. Asset is what is at risk. Any item or value to an organization, such as data, servers, or intellectual properties. Threat is the agent, a potential action or actor, such as a hacker or malware, that can exploit a vulnerability to cause harm. Vulnerability is the weakness, a flaw in design, implementation, or operation, such as an unpatched firewall that exposes an asset. A threat is the potential for a threat agent to exploit a vulnerability. It is a very specific type of risk and is defined as an action or occurrence that could result in a breach in the security, outage, or corruption of a system by exploiting known or unknown vulnerabilities. Who or what can cause harm? In a broad sense, a threat is anything that could exploit a vulnerability and hinder the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of anything valuable. Threats can either be natural or human-made and accidental or deliberate. Some examples of threats include insider threats, hackers, vandals, thieves, malware, including viruses and worms, phishing attacks, denial of service attacks, distributed denial of service attacks, ransomware, power outages, natural disaster, and computer failure. A vulnerability is a flaw or weakness in asset design, implementation, or operation and management that could be exploited by a threat. Decreasing system vulnerability reduces overall risk and can also limit the impact of threats on the system. How could harm occur? Sometimes a vulnerability can exist simply from an asset implementation or deployment. Examples might include leaving the door open or unlocked, not changing the default password, bugs in software that have not been patched, not using an anti-malware package, and system misconfiguration. An exploit is code or a technique that takes advantage of the system's vulnerability or weakness to cause unintended behavior, allowing attackers to compromise the system, install malware, steal data, or gain unauthorized access. A threat is a potential danger like a hacker or malware that can leverage the exploit and vulnerability to cause harm, linking the flaw to a malicious actor and potential impact. Simple analogy could include vulnerability, an unlocked window in a house. Exploit, the burglar's specific technique to open the unlocked window, such as using a Slim Jim tool or simply pushing it open. Threat is the burglar. The burglar, the actor who uses the tool, the exploit, to get through the unlocked window, the vulnerability, to steal things. Impact. Another simple analogy is the vulnerability is the default password for a router or firewall that was not changed. Exploit, a script that automatically tries the known passwords to log in. Threat, a hacker group, or botnet seeking control of your network. The hacker, the actor who uses the script, the exploit, to get access to the network and/or control a router or firewall, which is the vulnerability. A risk is the potential for loss when the threat happens. Once you know an asset's vulnerabilities and threats, you can determine how much risk is posed to the asset owner. This measures the combination of the likelihood that a threat exploits a vulnerability and the scale of harmful consequences. You will then figure out how to mitigate those risks to an acceptable level. You want to reduce your risk to an acceptable, cost-effective level. A threat tries to exploit a vulnerability, which leads to risk, which is resolved by mitigation and then affects the threat. You will never be able to eliminate risk. Since a complete security can never be fully achieved, the focus of security is more often the process instead of the goal. You discover network vulnerabilities through automated scanning, such as Nmap or Nessus, penetration testing, including simulated attacks, security audits, which include compliance checks such as CIS and HIPAA, network traffic monitoring, security information and event management, or SIM, to analyze logs for suspicious activities in real time, threat intelligence, configuration views to check for misconfiguration, open ports, weak protocols and weak credentials, and ensuring all software is patched and up to date, focusing on identifying missing patches. The process includes the following: asset inventory. Identify everything on your network, including devices, software, and cloud services. Scan and identify by running scanners to find weaknesses. Prioritize by ranking vulnerabilities by severity and business impact. Remediate by applying patches, change configurations, or segment networks. And lastly, verify to rescan to confirm fixes. Vulnerability scans rank security flaws using several standard scoring systems and context-based risk factors. While CVSS provides the baseline for technical severity, modern security programs increasingly rely on EPSS and asset criticality to determine actual remediation priority. Common Vulnerability Scoring System, or CVSS, remains the industry standard for measuring vulnerability technical severity on a scale of 0 to 10. Critical being 9 to 10, which is the immediate threat, often allows remote code execution without user interaction. High, which is 7 to 8.9, is significant threats that may require some local access or specific user actions. Medium, 4.0 to 6.9, are moderate threats often require high privileges or complex exploit conditions. And low, which is 0.1 to 3.9, are minor impacts such as limited information disclosure. Exploit Prediction Scoring System, EPSS, is different. Because high severity scores don't always mean a vulnerability is being targeted, many scanners incorporate EPSS to predict its likelihood of real-world exploitations. The purpose is to predict the probability from 0 to 100% that a vulnerability will be exploited in the wild within the next 30 days. Value helps teams prioritize low-severity bugs that are actively being used by attackers over critical bugs that have no known exploit. Risk management is the process of identifying, assessing, and mitigating risk to an organization's information, systems, and data. It involves implementing strategies and controls to reduce the impact or likelihood of security incidents while balancing the cost of those measures against the value of the protected assets. Organizations often use established frameworks to standardize their risk management approach that incorporates control, development, policy, and management activities into IT operations. Some popular frameworks include NIST Cybersecurity Framework, or CSF, which provides a structured process for risk assessment and mitigation. It includes functions like identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. IEC 27005 focuses on information security risk management in alignment with ISO 27001. ISO 31000 is an international standard that provides business with guidelines and principles for risk management from an international organization of standardization. The FAIR model uses quantitative analysis to measure and prioritize risk, while COBET focuses on governance and management of IT risk. Benefits of risk management include protect sensitive data and systems from compromise, reduce the likelihood of costly incidences or breaches, ensure compliance with regulatory requirements, builds trust with customers and stakeholders by demonstrating proactive security measures, and by integrating risk management into the broader security strategy, organizations can make informed decisions to protect their assets effectively. Steps in risk management include the following: identify risks, assess risks, mitigate risks, implement controls, and monitor and review. To identify risk, you need to look at your assets, which are catalog critical systems, data, and processes. Threats, which identify potential risks such as malware, phishing, and insider threats. And vulnerabilities, which assess systems weaknesses that could be exploited. Lastly, impacts determine the consequences if the threat materializes. When you assess risk, you must look at the following. Likelihood is the estimate of the probability of a threat exploiting a vulnerability. Severity includes assess the potential damage, such as financial, reputational, or operational, and use matrices or qualitative or quantitative models to rank risks. To mitigate risk, you'll do one of the following options. You can avoid, which remove or avoid activities that introduce the risk. Or you can mitigate or reduce by implementing safeguards like isolation, firewalls, encryption, and monitoring. You can transfer the risk by shifting the financial impact or responsibility of the risk to a third party, such as outsourcing or purchasing cyber insurance. An organization pays a premium to an insurance provider who then covers the cost of a data breach, ransomware, or other covered security incidents, or may also include moving risky operations to a specialized third party provider that assumes operational risk and often provides guarantees via service level agreement or SLA. It does not eliminate the underlying risk. It simply ensures that if an incident occurs, another entity is responsible for managing the consequences, typically financial ones. Lastly, you can accept or tolerate, which acknowledges the risk when mitigation is impractical or too costly. Risk acceptance must be formally documented and signed off by high-level stakeholders like a CISO or department head. It is never a casual decision. You then will implement controls, including administrative, which is policy, training, and procedures, technical, which includes tools like intrusion detection systems and encryption, and physical, such as locks, cameras, and secure facilities. Lastly, you need to monitor and review. Regularly evaluate the effectiveness of controls and update based on new threats, and use incident reports, audits, and vulnerability scans for continuous improvements. A legacy system with a security risk refers to outdated hardware, software, or operating system still in use that no longer receive vendor patches or support. Because of unpatched vulnerabilities and the lack of security updates make them easy targets for known exploits and lack of modern security controls that may not support modern authentication or advanced intrusion detection. Common examples include Windows Server 2008, Windows XP, or old SCADA systems, which are vulnerable to malware, data breaches, and exploitation. The long-term best practice is to replace or upgrade the system. If the system is critical and cannot be removed immediately, you should consider the following: network segmentation and isolation. Place the legacy system on a secure, isolated network segment, or VLAN, with restricted access to the main, modern, and production networks when the system must remain operational and connected to some degree. Compensating controls. Since legacy systems often cannot be patched, use tools like firewalls, intrusion prevention systems, or IPS, and strict access control lists, or ACLs, to mitigate risk. Virtual patching. Use network-based security tools such as firewalls or endpoint detection and response, or EDR, to block exploitation attempts targeting known vulnerabilities in the unsupported legacy software. Disable insecure protocols. Turn off or firewall off outdated protocols such as Telnet, FTP, or SMB version 1 that the legacy system might be using. Monitoring and logging. Implement strict continuous monitoring and logging to detect any unusual behavior, as those systems are likely to be targeted. An organization can decide to accept the risk of legacy systems when the cost of fixing it outweighs the potential impact of a breach. Business Impact Analysis, or BIA, is a systematic process used to identify and evaluate the potential effects of disruptions to business operations, processes, or systems. It is a key component of risk management and business continuity planning, helping organizations prepare for and respond to unexpected events. Its purpose is identify critical functions, which determine which business functions are essential to the organization's operations, and rank processes based on their importance to business continuity. Assess potential impacts, which include analyzing the financial, operational, reputational, and legal impacts of disruption, and calculate costs associated with downtime or loss of functionality. And support decision-making, which provides insight to allocate resources effectively and help prioritize disaster recovery efforts based on impact severity. The BIA should define establish recovery time objectives, or RTOs, which is the maximum acceptable downtime for an application or system after a failure or disaster. How long it takes to restore your system after a failure. Set recovery point objectives, or RPOs, the maximum acceptable amount of data loss measured in time, representing the age of the files or data and backup required to resume normal operations. It is based on how often you perform backups. If you back up every 4 hours, your RPO is going to be 4 hours because you have the potential of losing up to 4 hours of data. Question: which of the following is a security flaw in an application or network? Answer: a vulnerability. Question: which of the following risk management strategies should an enterprise adopt first if a legacy application is critical to business operations and there are preventive controls that are not yet implemented? Answer: mitigate. Question: which of the following risk management strategies would an organization use to maintain a legacy system with known risks for operational purposes? Answer: acceptance. Question: when selecting a technical solution for identity management, an architecture chooses to go from an in house solution to a third party SaaS provider. Which of the following risk management strategies is this an example of? Answer: transference. Question: which of the following is conducted frequently to maintain an updated list of system weaknesses? Answer: vulnerability scan. Question: which of the following describes when an active exploit is used to gain access to a network? Answer: penetration testing. Question: which of the following is associated with avoidance, acceptance, mitigation, and transfer? Answer: risk. Question: a network administrator wants to know which systems on the network are at risk of a known vulnerability. Which of the following should the administrator reference? Answer: CVE. Question: which of the following describes a malicious application that takes advantage of a software flaw? Answer: exploit. For more information, visit these sites. In summary, a risk is the potential for loss when a threat happens. Risk management is a process of identifying, assessing, and mitigating risk to an organization's information systems and data. By integrating risk management into their broader security strategy, organizations can make informed decisions to protect assets effectively. To identify risk, you need to look at assets, threats, vulnerabilities, and impacts. To mitigate risk, you would avoid, mitigate, or reduce, transfer, or accept a risk. Thank you for watching this video. The next video will be Networking Security Part 3, Types of Network Attacks. If you like this video, click the like button, and if you have not already, subscribe to the Pat Has Your Back channel. Thank you.